My name is Richard Crispin. I'm a CMC scientist, so I am a chemist here at SoftOx Solutions in Oslo. I've just moved here, just started this job after leaving OncoInvent as a senior research scientist. And I'm also formerly a EATRIS TMX alumni from 2019. So right now here at SoftOx Solutions, we are working on the fight towards antimicrobial resistance. So we have a really good and novel technology that can help overcome a lot of resistance barriers, say for instance in MRSA and other pathogens to come. We work on antimicrobial for wound irrigation. So for instance, if you have a chronically infected wound, which is typically very, very difficult to treat, we have designed a biofilm eradicator to flush and destroy the pathogens within this wound and hopefully bring healthier healing, quicker healing, and indeed healthier patients. So my typical activities at the moment is half meetings and planning and designing things like standing operating procedures, and half implementing them actually within the lab and then taking that and analyzing it. What I do day to day is I spend a lot of time being quite meticulous about the way in which I will set up an experiment or the way in which we'll do a specific type of analysis. The reason for this is because we have products that are either on the market or about to be approved, or we're going through the approval stage. So the type of science I do is very, very different. It spends a lot of time going through regulatory bodies, a lot of time going through certain aspects and certain standards we have to meet. So there's a lot of time planning this. But then when I'm in the actual lab, I think there's a lot of attention to detail that perhaps an academic wouldn't pay much more attention to. So a lot of ways of, are we doing this in the right way? Has this piece of equipment been calibrated the right way? And that attention to detail, I think, is what makes the translational ability of our science go from just being a basic research leading to a paper to going from a product that we're actually going to treat patients and give to consumers. And that's what the key differences were. But overall, most of this is done primarily for patient safety. And I think that's the thing that we always have in the back of our minds when we're working in science is patient safety first, and then the research comes after. So right now we are living in a global pandemic, and of course, this is affecting millions and millions of people worldwide. Now, while our technology wasn't specifically designed to treat the COVID virus or viruses in general, this is actually a byproduct of what we actually found out our product can do. It kills viruses very effectively. So we're hoping both with our hand sanitizer, our biofilm eradicator, so the treating of the chronic wound, and our inhalation products, we're going to be able to treat not only things like COVID, but a whole variety of diseases that are very, very difficult to treat. So things that avoid antibiotics, or for instance, biofilms in wounds are very, very difficult to treat. They're quite often chronic and resistant to almost all therapy, and our very, very simple yet effective treatment actually kind of counteracts that. So as I said previously, this is all designed to help patients. So hopefully my work here at SoftOx Solutions is going to help treat these really, really hard to treat antimicrobial diseases, such as, for our specialty, the really chronically infected wounds. And hopefully we're going to have healthier wounds, less sepsis, and more people surviving these horrible infected cuts that they get all over their body. Coming from an academic background, of course, being a rigorous researcher is something that's already in my nature. So that's something I already have brought to both my roles at OncoInvent, and now I bring here at SoftOx Solutions. I really, really enjoy, and I think I really thrive at kind of finding a problem and then just kind of dissecting that problem down to what experiments do I need to do to figure out the best solution to that problem. So for instance, when I was working at OncoInvent, a lot of the time was, is this antibody going to be able to actually treat a patient, treat a tumor? And now here at SoftOx Solutions, I get to use more of my chemistry, which is my training. And a lot of this is the drug, is this antimicrobial we're making going to effectively work? Is it pure? Is it doing the job that we want it to do? So on the flip side of this, because I come from such an academic background, I would argue that being a process innovator is something that is not so to our nature. It's like having to do what I'm doing a lot of right now, is kind of take a step back, really think about the steps you have to make in order to get from what you want to where you want to be. And I find not only is it slightly difficult for me, because of course in academia you kind of just go and you find, and what results you get kind of determines what you do next, whereas here there's much more of a common goal and much more of a layout and much more of a, okay, this is our plan, this is how we're going to do this, and if this doesn't work, this is our plan B. That type of thinking is very, very different to how I've been used to, and it's something that changes quite a lot as my day-to-day goes on. So as I do different tasks, different things change, and then there's a different dynamic on the day. I think that it's not something that I particularly struggle with, but I think it's definitely something that you don't realize is part of this way of thinking within the private sector. So that's something that I would like to build upon and kind of go forward. So the in-between of this, I think, is a system thinker. Now, system thinking is a way of approaching science that we do quite a lot here in the private sector that's not so much approached so much in research. But I found that it's something you kind of do, I've been doing without even thinking, in the irony of it. Because when you kind of take a moment to kind of think about what you've been actually doing and how you're approaching certain topics and how you kind of move forward on your projects, you actually do see that there's a lot of shared characteristics between how you approach it in academia and how you approach it in the private sector. So actually a lot of the ways that you kind of approach subjects and approach problems in the academia is very useful and it's very needed in terms of what's needed scientifically in the private sector. So that kind of crossover also very much helps. So working in Norway, we have quite a problem with the amount of resources that are actually available to us. Not only is Norway quite a small country, but I think Norway is kind of struggling to form an ecosystem in terms of small biotech and small pharmaceuticals. As such, that means we really have to outsource a lot of the work we do. So for instance, when I worked at OncoInvent, as I said already, we have clinical trials in Belgium and in Sweden, and we also work with companies that do work for us in the US, in Finland and elsewhere in Europe and the world. And the same here at SoftOx Solutions. While we do a lot of work here in Oslo, we actually have a lot of work that gets done in Denmark, in Copenhagen. That's because the resources are much more available for us to do certain aspects, whether it's collaborating with other biotechs, whether it's collaborating with hospitals, or whether it's just certain things like being able to work more easily with the government or with policy. It's much easier kind of outside Norway. And I think that's one of the things I really am hoping will be slowly brought into Norway. And it is, you can start seeing it here in Oslo, for instance, is having much more of an ecosystem, much more a drive to have a lot of biotechs and a lot of pharmaceutical companies all in one place, all helping each other out. The biggest piece of advice I'd give to any young professional who's considering moving into my role is it's never too late. So whether you have decided quite early on, if you're in your early 20s, mid 20s, or you are hitting your 30s and going on to your 40s and you think perhaps it's too late to move from academia into research, or perhaps it's too late to have a complete career change. I think that for me, being a 32-year-old, like I've only just really moved into the private sector last year, or first working in OncoInvent. And that was the first kind of eye-opening experience I had, that actually there's lots of different people who come from different backgrounds into biotech, into pharmaceuticals at lots of different ages, whether it's people who've originally been working in, say, marketing and they wanted a new challenge and they had an interest in biologic, so they move when they're in their 50s. That's my biggest piece of advice, is it's never too late. But my second piece of advice is, if you really want to come into this field of work, then you really need to focus on finding the right people to talk to, whether it's going on a course such as the EATRIS TMX course, or whether it's going to approach certain people at conferences, whether they work for companies that perhaps you would like to work for. I would say that people are genuinely always very, very happy to help you. So for instance, when I was on the TMX course, I asked a lot of questions, and everyone who was there attending that course were very, very happy to help. And they always gave me different pieces of advice. And coming back to what I just said, is that there's no golden rule. So there's no like one way to write your CV. There's no one way to write your cover letter. Just be uniquely yourself. Really make sure you home in on what your skills are. And your skills are far more than just what you do academically. You know, you do a podcast, or you're a great communicator, these things. But I would just say, find the right people. It's never too late, and just kind of be true to yourself and kind of know what your skills are. And I think you'll really thrive if you wanted to move into my sector.